what's your name, but you got me begging. All I know about you like to pick and choose, make it all about you. Go take it all if you want. Taking the chance, stuck in my head, not gonna leave it at that. Taking the lead, feeling your heat, just wanna give you my best. I don't even know your name, but you got me, 'cause you're old to die. We don't know what happens next, but you got me, 'cause I'm next to none. You make it look so easy, making me feel so dreamy. Never wanna pay for drinks, but you got me, 'cause you're old to die. Got me locked in now. Go ahead and take a shot. Do you really want me? Maybe you're just playing. The way you're making it move, yeah, you do it so smooth. Make it all about you. Can have it all if you want. Taking the chance, stuck in my head, not gonna leave it at that. Taking the lead, feeling your heat, just wanna give you my best. Taking the chance, stuck in my head, not
Welcome again, or welcome back to the Meta Behind Relationships. I'm Gaylon McDowell, and I am going to cover a serious topic today, which is what is your partner's relationship paradigm? And this topic is so important because we need to make sure that we understand the context through which our partner views relationships. Today, I need you to make sure that you have your notepad, have a pen or a pencil, because, hey, I'm here to deliver some hardcore metaphysics because that's what I do. So if you're ready for some hardcore metaphysics, get your pen, get your notebook, because we're about to jump deeply into this subject matter. Today, I'm going to have, again, the founder and CEO of the 5S for Love podcast network or organization, Christine Burkett. Christine, are you there?
Gaylon, I'm here, and I just want to say it's a privilege. I feel like I'm getting my own one-on-one counseling sessions every week, and it's a lot of people jealous. They want to come on and be your guest. So I don't know, guys, you can let us know if you would like to be a guest based on his upcoming topics and shows, and we'll find out how Gaylon wants to manage that. But honestly, I feel like I'm on my weekly 1-hour couch session. And folks, so I'm ready to get started. I'm eager, like everybody else, to learn what is a paradigm and how can you help me as an individual or me in a relationship with understanding what the paradigm is and how to use it for a successful outcome to be in a successful relationship. I'm excited.
Yeah, and absolutely. If you want to come on and ask questions, reach out to Christine, and she can put in the comment section an email address or the Facebook page, or go to the YouTube page and write a comment, and well, we'll figure it out. We want to make sure that you have the opportunity to ask me questions, because it's your questions that will drive this show. All right. So, dealing with a paradigm, and what that looks like, first of all, because I think that's the first thing we need to be clear about. What actually is a paradigm? Now, you can go and get the Webster's Dictionary definition of this. What I'm going to give you is the hardcore metaphysician's definition of this. And that's basically a paradigm is a mental program or blueprint that determines how the world occurs to you, and it determines how you show up and present yourself to the world. It shows up as how you see life, your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, your context. In other words, it's your own rose-colored glasses. It's literally how you see life, but it is so absolute you think that it is actually how life is, instead of it just being a system or an accumulation of beliefs.
So what you're saying, Galen, in a sense is I'm creating my own reality, whether it's true or false, but it's the reality that I'm creating. So if I see fear and confusion, I'm going to view everything through that lens of fear and confusion.
Yes, because it's a program. And here's the thing. The subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between the past, present, and future experience. It experiences everything as the same. For example, you can be in a situation. Let's use outside of relationships. Let's use a work example.
Okay.
The supervisor says, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something. Come to my office." Now, you can have in your imagination all type of things that are happening. You pulling up things that happen in work. Did you do this right? Did you do that right? Different conversations, whatever. And you're creating something in your mind, even though it hasn't happened yet.
Yes.
You will still get the same fears. You'll get the body reaction. Your body might start to sweat. Your heart might start beating hard. You might have adrenaline dumps. It's all type of things that can happen with your life. Some people, their nervous system starts to activate and do weird things, and nothing's actually happened.
But in my mind, it's happening.
But in your mind, it's already happening, or it has happened. Now, let's take a look at something that happened possibly 30 years ago. Somebody you didn't get along with well, and you see that person on the street, but you had bad experiences. You can have the same anger or the same fear. It's a trigger that's happened based upon memories in your subconscious mind, and you can have the experience now, even though it happened 30 years ago, just like you can have the experience now, and it hasn't happened yet. So that paradigm literally determines how you, I'm gonna use broken English now, but it's the best way to say this, how you be in the world, your way of being.
It's your way of being. Okay, so when you say the paradigm and how it impacts your relationships, I'm going to give you an example. A really, really good friend of mine has severe anxiety. My friend meets with her boss every Wednesday, and literally she wakes up on panic because she knows the meeting is coming and is so intense, to the point where she's had to medicate herself because she has these major anxiety attacks. But it's not over just meeting with her boss. That's like the biggest thing, right? But she panics over everything. Everything is a panic. So how could, when you talk about how does this impact, the paradigm impact your relationships, explain to me how, if I could be of any assistance to her, I mean, I try to tell her to go for a walk, breathe, and stuff like that. But how can I help her? Because she's been doing this for years in like the sky is falling kind of mentality.
Right. So literally she has to shatter the old paradigm and create a new one. So the first thing, obviously, and I'm not talking to her, but if she's listening to this or you parlay this information, I would say the first thing is she has to recreate the meaning of the meetings. Okay. What does that mean? Recreate. Okay. What does these meetings mean to you? Because the meaning you give it will determine your reaction. Because the thing about paradigms, that we need to understand is that they are habitual. In other words, you don't have to think a certain kind of way because this is the way life is occurring to you.
Right.
Therefore, it's showing up subconsciously as just is the way I am. I'm an anxious person. I get anxious around meetings. I get
Right.
nervous versus saying, okay, I am creating the meaning for this situation. And it's not the meeting, it's me. Like I said last week, I meet no one but me. That's the first thing. So getting clear on the story she's making up about this versus the facts are two totally different things. What we do in life is we intertwine fact and meaning, fact and story. And the first stage of the process is how do you separate, and we can get into that a little bit. How do we separate what happened or what is happening versus what I'm making it mean? That's because
Okay.
those two things really matter, because if you don't get that, then everything else I'm saying is not going to land.
Right.
You have to recognize that, okay, this is happening and this is what I'm making it mean. All right. For example, in the context of relationships, and I'm going to come back to your friend, in the context of relationships, two people can be having the biological act called sex. For some
Right.
people, they're having, they're in the midst of love making.
Right. It's a spiritual thing or something, some
Yeah,
sort of connection.
it's the stars are aligning.
Exactly.
And for somebody
We
else,
belong together.
right, this is one of many potential options, or
Right.
they're just getting physical relief. All right.
Right.
Two totally different things. All right. So how can the same act be happening? Two people doing the same exact thing, experiencing the same thing, have two
But
totally different things
at
happening at the same time.
the same
It's
time.
because you live out of your paradigm. So your friend, uh, if I was working with, I would challenge her on her paradigms around
Right.
around the meetings. I would challenge it, and then I would work on developing a level of self-image and self-confidence. Last week, I gave some
That's what I
homework
was going to ask you.
about
Yes.
looking in the mirror, affirming, uh, breathing exercises. I think with a person who's very anxious, they
Right.
need to get in contact with their body. So just taking some time and just doing some breathing exercise, some simple maybe qigong type tai chi. Tai chi is a whole form, but the basic qigong breathing exercises, things of that nature, which is Chinese breathing meditation exercises, those type of things can help people get centered back into their bodies, because what ends up happening is when people get anxious, they get detached from their bodies mentally,
Right.
emotionally, and that creates stress, which
Yes.
then creates a cycle of anxiety, stress, frustration, fear, and it just keeps going over and over again. So the thing about it is you break the cycle. Now, how can you break the cycle? You break the cycle.
Before you say break the cycle, though, so you're saying me as an individual, if I'm coming into a relationship with these rose-colored glasses about anxiety, stress, then I'm bringing that into the relationship, right?
Yes, yes.
So what does an individual need to understand about the paradigm to gain successful outcomes? May it be at work, like man and woman, physical attraction relationships, friendships. Like what do individuals need to understand?
Okay. I'm gonna deal with that. Let me just complete my thought on the erase and
Okay.
replace. Deny and affirm. What does that mean? You have to literally start to create statements to deny the power of a situation, circumstance, or person. And then that's erase.
Right.
You replace it with strong proclamations, affirmations, or declarations of what it is that you desire to experience. And you have to do
Okay.
that over and over again and get yourself to the place to where you're not letting the idea go until you literally transform what the thing means to you. So you just have to keep going back to the well, as they say, and carrying the water. It's like my
So
kung
it's a
fu teacher.
repetitive process. So
It's
people need to
repetitive.
know it's not going to happen overnight.
Right. You have to
Okay.
continue going back to the well. As my kung fu teacher always says to me, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It's the
Gaylon, did you just
repetition.
reference Kung Fu?
Yeah, yeah. Shout out Seafood Daryl Curry.
All
But
right.
anyway, but he tells me that over and over again
Right.
because it doesn't make a difference what level you are on. It's the same steps, erase
It's
and
the same
replace.
steps.
All right. Now, when you start dealing with what people bring into relationships to gain successful outcomes, is what does an individual need to know about their partner's relationship paradigm? It's they need to know how they view a relationship being healthy, how they view a
Okay.
relationship being successful, how they view good and proper and honorable communication. They need to
Okay.
understand how those topics were taught to them directly or indirectly in their upbringing and in their past relationships.
Okay. So Galen, like, so let's say you want to get to know me. We just started going out. How would you ask me those questions? Because you don't know if I've been abandoned, abused sexually, or anything, to understand what lens I'm looking at this relationship through. Like, what questions would you initially ask me?
Okay, so I think the first thing is I wouldn't go directly in initially, and let me say I
Right.
wouldn't in the context of I wouldn't do that at all now because
Oh,
I'm
well,
married.
not initially.
But
I'm
but
just
in
saying
the
at some
context of
point.
this of this
Yeah.
of this
Yeah.
hypothesis, I always say that shout
Okay,
out,
so wait,
hey,
folks, Galen is saying disclaimer. Don't take
yeah,
her out on the first date asking this,
yeah,
okay?
right,
He's
right.
saying,
So
all right, that's the
so
disclaimer. Don't ask on the first date.
right. So the first thing as you're getting to know someone and you're trying to understand the relationship paradigm is do the one thing that allows people to do what they always love to do. Ask them questions about themselves. Many times people show up and they are so busy um uh just talking that they
Mhm.
don't get an opportunity to get feedback from the person they're trying to get to know. So just asking questions, like, hey, what are the things you like to do? You know, hey, what interests you? Do you have any hobbies? Um, you know, and
Maybe
those,
ask them about their childhood a little bit.
yeah, I'm not there yet though. See, because
Okay.
here's the thing. You want to develop a sense of
Current state
trust
versus
and
previous state.
and
Okay.
good communication. And sometimes people meet around particular subjects. They meet at work, they meet at fraternities, they meet at parties, they meet at different places, church. It can be different. So sometimes the context of those things can help you understand, hey, how did you get into, XYZ field? And people will start to tell you about themselves and the things that matter to them.
That's
All right.
true.
So that's just starting to pay attention and listening. Uh, as Stephen Covey would say, seek to understand, then to be understood. See, people want to be understood first before they understand. And
Understand.
that's why they don't understand their partner's relationship paradigm. So as you start to get into these things and you start to have more communications, then you can start talking about, hey, how was, childhood, what are the things that you like to do as a child, except those type of things,
Right.
those questions will come up. I wouldn't go right into, have you been assaulted in a past relationship or by a family member or whatever. I think it's important for us to recognize you have to build trust and anybody who goes directly into really hard questions without at least dealing with the surface stuff first will potentially scare off a partner. Like, you show up, and I've heard this situation, circumstance from guys who say, "Oh, I was sitting down and talking with her, and the next thing you know, I got." These bills got to be paid, and my daddy wasn't there, and my this, that, and the other, and the supervisor at work. I can't stand her. She's always picking on me. And before you
Right.
get a chance to know the real values and heart of a person, they've
Right.
already dumped their stuff on you. And for a guy,
That's a
normally
lot.
that's a red flag to get away.
So basically, ladies, real talk, and gentlemen, first you have to gain a person's confidence. And Galen said, you got to listen. You got to be willing to listen and not talk so much. Do more listening than talking. And then do ask questions that's going to gain their trust. Just casual questions like, how did you get into this career path? How long did you go to school? because then they'll start volunteering that additional information, but you got to keep note. So, and the other thing is, before that, as an individual, Galen always says, take your notes. I have sticky notes. I listen to what he says, by the way, and I have sticky notes. So in your sticky notes, folks, you got to start talking to yourself. If it's changed the way you think, then put change the way I think. How do I see today? Maybe that's your next sticky note. So you got to start reminding yourself to see things a little bit differently than the way you see it. So guys, when we get back, which I'm excited about, what steps is Galen going to recommend for us to discover our partner's paradigm? I can't wait to hear this, because everybody who knows, honey, this is my year to get a contract. I need to know how to discover my partner's paradigm. We'll be right back, folks, after these messages.
Welcome back to the Meta Behind Relationships. I'm dealing with understanding how to determine your partner's relationship paradigm. Christine is helping me and asking me some really great questions and drill down questions on my topic. So let's continue to have this great conversation. I want to make sure that you're taking notes. And I also want to just remind you that if you have questions, you might not want to come on the show and whatever live, leave your questions in the comment section or contact Christine directly, and I will address your questions on the show directly. Okay, I will say, Joe Smith had a question about this. James Smith had a question about that, and I will address those questions very directly and using hardcore metaphysics, because that's what I do. All right.
Okay, guys, real talk though. He says I'm helping him, he's helping me. Okay. I know a lot of you are like, why does she get her own one-on-one sessions? Honey, that's what happens when you're the boss. You can get your little one-on-one. But the difference is, guys, I'm sharing my one-on-ones publicly. See, I'm sharing myself and what I say. So So I'm going to tell you, this is what I want to know, because I think a lot of times you bring in a lot of baggage, right? From previous relationships. And the baggage is sometimes in your mind. It's a mindset. And that's when you're saying about the paradigm. So our next question is definitely relevant to that. Like, what steps do you recommend for someone to discover their partner's relationship paradigm? Because I don't think some people understand this. This is like a huge, what do you call it? Deal breaker. Mm-hmm. This is a huge deal breaker, and it could either bring you together or separate you. So, I mean, what are your steps to helping us figure this whole thing out?
Well, it's two ways. First of all, let me just recognize that some people recognize their paradigm, their partner's relationship paradigm. In other words, some people are very aware of what triggers them and what doesn't, and some people are very unaware. So because of that, I borrow something. I didn't create it, but I'm going to share it now. It's called hold on to your nuts.
I love
And it means non-negotiable, unalterable terms. Non-negotiable, unalterable terms. So what that means is this, and I don't remember the guy who said it, but the idea behind it is, as you're communicating with your partner, you need to figure out a way to understand their real bottom lines. Some people say they have bottom lines and they don't have bottom lines, but most people have non-negotiable. Like this, not even up for conversation. Non-negotiable, unalterable. In other words, this doesn't change terms. Now, I don't believe that anybody should have 55 non-negotiable, unalterable terms, because that means you just want to be alone. And as Canvas Sam used to say, go buy a dog. So
Okay, but Galen, please separate this because women have their list, which is different than non-negotiables.
Okay, and let me just say that. And even with the list, you need to understand there's list and then there's non-negotiable, unalterable terms. So your list might be 6'5", but your non-negotiable, unalterable term is to be treated with integrity and honesty.
I love that.
You got to know the difference, because if a guy shows up and he's 5'10" and he has all the check marks, then you have to ask yourself, okay, is this a deal breaker? Is this a non-negotiable, unalterable term? And if a person has too many, men or women, if they have too many non-negotiable, unalterable terms, it creates problems. So you literally ask people, what is your real bottom lines? What are your non-negotiables?
Right.
And really get to the space of understanding what the non-negotiables are. That's the first level, because it gives people an opportunity to really think about it. Then the second thing is pay attention to what triggers them, either in your communication with them or their communication with others.
Like facial triggers or emotional?
Meaning emotional triggers.
Okay.
Body language doesn't lie. The voice normally, when a person is triggered, their voice changes.
Okay.
Some people shrink.
Okay.
Some people get scared. Some people get, aggressive. You have to understand, okay, what's triggering this person? Because, I never forget, Tony Robbins was talking about his relationship with his first wife. And he came from a family where, because of his mother and father having domestic, I don't know if it was fighting physically, but he fought a lot. So I don't want to say that they were physically fighting, because I don't know, but because people say fighting and that can mean different things.
Yes.
So in his family, people argue stuff out.
Right.
He married a woman who her family didn't do stuff like that.
She was terrorized.
This big 6'7", 285-pound man being demonstrative because he was trying to get his point across.
She's terrorized at that point.
Okay.
She didn't know what happened.
Now, it wasn't ill will.
Right. That's just the way he communicated.
It was the context, it was the paradigm of communication in his family. All right.
Right.
So she was shut down, and he had to figure out, okay, I have to figure out immediate, because I recognize that me getting too high one way and her getting too low another way doesn't make sense. How can we have an understanding that sometimes I get passionate, but I got to catch it. And she has to be able to catch. Sometimes when I face conflict or resistance, I have to fight the desire to shut down. So when you start to pay attention, okay, when conflict shows up, when resistance shows up, when disagreement shows up, what is their normal and natural reaction? Okay. Because that'll tell you a lot about that person's relationship paradigm. How do they communicate when they're in the good times and during the miscommunications or arguments? Because couples argue. The question is, though, even the rules of arguing can matter. For instance, some people argue and they call each other's names. Like, I could never be in a situation or circumstance where if I disagree with my wife, she would call me out of my name. That wouldn't work for me, and it wouldn't work for her. So even when you communicate, there's levels to this, because I know, grew up, South Side Chicago. I've seen some people when they got mad at their significant other, they called them everything but a child of God. And then they go right back to being in a relationship. And it was just perplexed me, because I'm like, okay, that's a bridge I can't cross.
Right.
So
Because
you
you
have
can't
to
come back from that.
Right.
In some people, you can't come back from that.
Right. But for some people, it's natural and normal.
Okay, but what about when people misread? Like for me, when I'm in a relationship with a man and it becomes verbally aggressive, I get quiet. And sometimes people go in harder because they feel like you're not listening. But what they don't understand is I grew up in an abusive childhood. And so for me, I go back to being a kid, and it's like I'm going to go hide. But because I'm an adult, I can't go hide. I just stop talking.
Yes. So I think that I think when people are dealing with a situation like what you're talking about, and unfortunately, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to, as early as possible, communicate up front. This is an issue for me. And I need, because I know relationships are not always going to be sunshine and walking down the street with roses. Therefore, when we have breakdowns, I need you to understand, when this happens, this is how this affects me. Now, that's ahead of time communication. But I believe in 100% responsibility. Therefore, I don't believe that you leave it there. I think you start it there. The second part of it is, and I will work on myself to make sure that I'm not easily triggered unintentionally. In other words, I'm going to do my mental, spiritual, and emotional work to get myself in a good headspace to where I am not triggered. So it's not one person making all the changes and I just get to be the victim because mama or daddy or whoever was abusive when I was a child.
Right.
I believe that it requires, and this might not be popular with how it's taught in other places and spaces, but I believe in 100% responsibility. Therefore, if I'm bringing emotional issues into the relationship, it is my responsibility not only to communicate it, but also to work on myself to not allow it to be an issue as much as possible.
Okay, so in this situation, which leads into our next question, so how would you act on the notes that you've taken? What are your recommendations on how you should communicate with your partner? And this is the example. I've been in relationships with people where they took it as, oh, what I'm saying is not important to you. You just not saying nothing. And I'm like, well, we had this conversation before. I don't do well with this type of interaction. So I'm giving you a moment to calm down so you can just talk to me instead of yelling at me. Because again, I normally date people who are much bigger than me. And in my mind, my attitude is, you're so aggressive, it may go from from a verbal to a physical in seconds because you're heated. But normally what I get is, oh, you're not listening? You don't understand, but you're too good that you just think you that high and mighty that no, I'm just quiet because I'm listening to you. So they misunderstand. So what do you say when a person has taken notes and their notes are incorrect because they're still looking at this paradigm through their rose-colored glasses? Like they still don't understand what you just said to them 20 times. I don't do well with high volume conversations.
Okay. So first of all, you can't understand how somebody else functions if you don't understand how you function. That's the first thing. So I think a person needs to get really in touch with, how do I communicate? Why do I communicate that way? Is this the best way to communicate in this circumstance? All right.
Okay.
And also with the understanding that people can change their communication style based upon the situations and circumstances. For instance, how a person communicates in a heated situation and circumstance might be different when the police pulls you over.
Right.
People don't need to communicate like they're ready to jump on somebody at a park over and fight somebody when the police with the gun, the badge, and several other police on their way is showing up. So people have to understand that part of a civil society is the adjustment of attitude, depending on where you are. Now that we got that out of the way.
Yes.
in a situation where a person is a couple is having a breakdown and it's turned into an argument. One of the best ways to be able to handle that when it gets too heated is to be able to say, hey, I hear what you say. I feel as though right now that this is a little heated. Can we talk about this later tonight or in the morning, whatever the situation, but it can't be indefinite. Let's talk about this later. Very specific. Can we talk about this at this time? So we can both have an opportunity to calm down, cycle down, and be able to communicate properly. All right. Another way in which that can be done is for those who have issues with shutting down is to communicate, send a text via, write your thoughts out, be very clear, send it, because even though text messages can be miscommunicated or misunderstood rather, it does take the emotion out of the conversation.
Okay.
And sometimes people are reading emotion more than they're reading what's actually being said.
Right.
But I'm still a big believer in taking time. Let's step back. Let's say, hey, let's talk about this tonight after dinner. Let's talk about this in the morning. I don't like things to linger long. If you can deal with whatever you got to deal with that day, I recommend it, because if not, it's sitting on your soul the whole night, and that can just create more drama because you've given an opportunity to grow. But if a person knows, okay, I'm dealing with this today, I'll have an opportunity to get this off my chest in a harmonious way, then I think that's helpful. And then, sometimes it's also reading the room. Sometimes maybe those situations or circumstances are happening because we didn't just do something simple like a check-in question. Hey, I need to talk to you about something. Is this a good time for you?
That I was going to ask you that, because a lot of times people just walk in the house on 1000. I'm addressing this and they don't even ask, let me check in with them. It's like you would do that at work. You would knock on the person's door and say, hey, Gaylon, you got a minute, or you need me to come back? I want to talk to you about something. But I think in our personal relationships, we don't allow for that. We just think, I'm with you and this is what's happening in that moment. So that's a great point. So listen, guys, when we get back, we're really going to sit down and talk about if your mindset, like if you looking at life still through your altered rose-colored glasses, you're in a relationship with someone, how you can reflect on yourself after so many, how we keep having the same conversation. And Gaylon, you're a marriage counselor. So you get people sitting in front of you and you like, we didn't have this conversation about this 5 times. One of y'all is not seeing the reality of this and you can't let it go because you're still stuck in that time period, that time zone, that period where this happened. You just can't wipe off the rose colors and move forward. So folks, when we get back, I'm going to tell you right now, if y'all don't know this, I keep my sticky note, here it is, because I'm writing down notes because y'all in on my one-on-one session. I don't know if y'all don't understand this. This is my one-on-one. Okay. We're going to be back so we can finish Christine's one-on-one because I need to know what's happening in my life. Be right back, guys.
Get it that I'm never going back. Get it that I'm never going back. I get to it first, I got you mad. I guess that when I get to it last. Get it that I'm never going back. Get it that I'm never going back. Going up, going up, going up, going up, going up, going up. Get it that I'm never going up, going up.
I gotta tell you something I could do. I could be running around chasing you, but I won't. Cause I got better things to do. Rather spend my precious time chasing somebody who loves me too. If I got $1 for every time you slip
And you just keep on letting me down. I can't taste it with your lips on mine, that you don't love me like you did that night. I'm so nervous that you'll never feel the same, and you'll never find a place in my arms. Hey, show me love, 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 show me love. I'm not asking you for much, just give me something to feel. Show me love, show me love, show me love. Call me up if you feel a little lonely, I wanna spend some more time with you. Cause I'm anxious to know what you feel for me now. Just give me something I can taste it with your.
Welcome back to the meta behind relationships. We're discussing how to understand your partner's relationship paradigm. And I think what I'm trying to get across to you today is something very simple. The way you see the world and the way you see yourself and the way you see your partner is not necessarily what's happening. It's just how you see it. And the more you can get past your own beliefs, your own thoughts and feelings around a thing, and to be able to observe properly what's actually happening in front of you, and then take constructive, positive, and creative action toward what you desire, the more you will give yourself an opportunity to have a successful relationship. But to do that, you got to get unstuck. And then you have to help your partner get unstuck if you feel as though, because I haven't said this earlier, if you feel as though that person is worth the effort. Because if you do something and you don't feel as though the person is worth the effort, then you have one foot in the door and one foot out of the door. And energetically, that just doesn't match.
So, you know what, Gaylon, one of the things that I hear a lot of times, and you talk about paradigms, that a lot of men really feel like a woman should cook. And people need to understand there's a difference between paradigm and expectations. See, you can look through life through an expectation. Their idea is, well, a real woman's going to come home and cook every day. My mama cooked. Women hear that a lot. My mama cooked. She worked. Why can't you come home and cook? So now is that just an expectation, or is that really a paradigm? What is that, a paradigm or an expectation?
Well, the paradigm is producing the expectation because they grew up in a context.
Okay.
Right? So the way that they view life, this is what they saw. And from their point of view, this is what works. So then you show up, not saying you, the hypothetical you, the world.
I show up and don't cook.
Okay, you show up and don't cook. And then the question is, okay, then why isn't it? Now, here's the thing. The real issue is not whether you cook or not. The real issue is this a non-negotiable, unalterable term? In other words, is this a deal breaker? Because for some guys, that's a deal breaker.
Right.
And that is what it is. Now, here's the thing. I think one of the things that we have to do when we start talking about human relationships, dating, marriage, cohabitating, is getting past the place of making people villains because they have paradigms that might not work for you but work for them. In other words, for some people, cook every day,
it's a no-brainer.
Swing from the chandelier sex every day is their paradigm, and that's what.
But what if I can get one out of two? But what if I can swing from a chandelier, but I'm not?
But again, it doesn't make a difference if that's that guy's paradigm.
Okay, so ladies, you heard that. If that's that man's paradigm, you could have 50% of the paradigm, but the other 50%, it ain't leveling out for him.
And here's the thing. People have basic needs. And when I say basic needs, that's again a part of the non-negotiables. And when you understand what his needs or her needs are, it helps you understand what needs to be met at the baseline,
at the core level of the relationship.
Okay, you're right. For this relationship to work for your partner, all right. And if those needs are not going to be met, either they'll shut down, they'll detach, they'll leave, or they'll seek to get those needs met outside of the relationship. Most adulterous relationships start with a need not being met. And it's not always sex.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you all understand that? Say that again for them, Gaylon, because some people don't understand.
It's real. Most adulterous relationships start with a need not being met. People think, oh, that man is just a dog, or that woman is just a whatever. These terms we like to use for people. And look, I'm not saying that them violating the integrity of their relationship
Right.
is something that we should just brush over. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm
Right.
saying is, when you're not paying attention to a need, that need can be met somewhere else. I never forget a minister I know. He travels the world speaking. He not so much now, but pre-pandemic, he was all over the world. And he would often say that when he counseled women, because he would go to different churches and organizations or whatever, he would never counsel a woman if he had previously gotten into an argument with his wife like the same day or the night before. He felt as though that made him vulnerable. Now, people can say that's ridiculous.
No, but it makes
Here's
sense.
the thing. Here's the thing. He said, well, my wife thinks I'm an idiot, and then this person thinks I'm wise as Moses. and
Your nature tends to kind of feed into that.
He's like, it's like she doesn't laugh at my jokes.
Right.
This person I'm counseling is laughing at all my jokes. They
Right.
think I'm wise. They think I'm creative. They think I'm powerful. And if that's a need, or if there's a breakdown, a person needs to know. They need to know themselves enough to not put themselves in situations that could jeopardize themselves. So again, if most adulterous relationships begin with a need not being met.
Okay, but Gaylon, let me ask
I'm
you.
not saying, and I'm not saying for the habitual cheater. I'm not talking about the habitual cheater. I'm not talking about the people who just want to live a life outside of integrity.
Right.
Okay. Because those people, for those people, that's their paradigm.
For them to live that way. So, Gaylon, let me ask you a question now. A lot of women and a lot of men talk, and you know what they say to me? How could they do this? We're having sex 4 days out of the week. I'm being intimate. I'm loving them 4 or 5 days out of the week. When does he or she have time to go out and do this? And I think people are missing the bar. It's not the fact that you're having sex with them. What type of sex? Are you satisfied? It goes back to that need. You could be having sex with them, but it's not the kind of sex that they're looking for. It's what you're looking for. They just satisfying you. Maybe they aren't being satisfied. So can you speak to that? Because a lot of people are going to say, well, I am with my partner.
Well, I think that can be true, that those situations happen. And sometimes it is true where a person's just not sexually compatible. I guess that's the best term. And people don't want to communicate the truth of that for various reasons. There was a song when I was a little boy that the old school people in my family used to play. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but the song was it's Cheaper to Keep Her by Johnny Taylor. So the idea
I knew you were going to say that.
So because of that, a lot, and I'm only speaking from a male perspective.
Right. Yeah.
Some of those guys would go get what we would call now side chicks, adulterous relationships, because they didn't want to break up their family. They didn't want to go broke. They didn't want to be away from their children and whatever, but they weren't necessarily always satisfied at home. Not justifying it by no stretch of the imagination.
Right.
But you can't. But if you don't address the causes of things, then sometimes you don't ever get to resolutions. And many times the women knew. They were pretending they didn't know, but they knew, but they just didn't want it rubbed in their faces. Now, if a person is feeling as though they're jumping through hoops and a person is still not responsive, then they have to recognize that paradigm for that person is different than yours. Because somebody might have the paradigm, especially a lot of guys, is they're there for the hunt. But here's the thing. They don't only want to hunt one type of thing or one type of prey, quote unquote. In other words, for some people, the ego boost of having a lot of women, having women take care of you, pay for your stuff, buy you stuff, things of that nature, are all a part of their paradigm that feeds their false sense of self. But because they don't realize it's a false sense of self, that they are seeking to get validation from the domination of their sexual prowess or their ability to attract women. Now, one of the things that many studies have shown, it's not me saying this, but many studies have shown, at least from the male perspective, is many times powerful men are very not only high sex drive guys, but they're also sexually magnetic.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is, and I'm gonna just use, for instance, President Bill Clinton. Women loved that guy in the 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like
He was
amazing.
a rock star.
But the problem was still needing to be the rock star versus needing to be the president.
Exactly.
Okay. So you put the nation through something unnecessary.
Yeah.
Because you're a highly talented, powerful, intellectual man, but with a crack in the cup of your character.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't make a difference how talented and powerful you are if there's a crack in the character of the cup of your character. So we have to just be mindful of those type of things. But most people are very unconscious. So what they do is they try to do the ego feed. Women do the same thing. What's the thing that feeds your ego? Like some women love to have a roster of guys chasing behind them.
They do.
Falling all over their feet, buying them everything they want, getting away with whatever they want to get away with. That matters to them instead of something that is more true, authentic, and powerful, something that is spiritually connected, something that is based upon love and mutual respect, not just what can I get out of this guy in the moment.
Right.
So what ends up happening is because because your paradigm, and I'm hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about this because I know we don't have a lot of time left. When you start talking about universal law, cause and effect.
That was my next thing. I wanted you to explain universal law and how that connects with the paradigm.
Right. So it is a matching like energy, and like energy doesn't mean two victims get together. It means that like energy is the older guy with the yacht that only likes to spend money so he can be around young hot women is going to attract the young hot woman who likes to have money spent on them, and they're not really caring about the depth of the relationship. They'll trade time, energy, many times sex, for access to wealth, and somebody else will trade wealth for the access to young hot females he want to have sex with. So the law of attraction is going to pull those type of things together because it has to match energetically. So your
energies have to match.
Right. Energetic. The energies have to match. So if a person's in a relationship where they're consistently showing up the same type of person that they've been dating or marrying and keep showing up, what I ask people to do is stop and ask themselves the question. One, who's the common denominator in all of those relationships? Me. Two, what are some of the characteristics that all of those people have? Okay. All right. Three, what is it about me that attracts partners that have those particular characteristics? Because that's the soul lesson.
Right.
Okay. That's the soul lesson. So, if you're communicating with someone who is domineering and aggressive, whether that's male and female, because women can be domineering and aggressive. That's not a male trait.
Right.
Then the question is, that person keeps showing up over and over again, different face, same person. Then that says that out of all of these people on the planet and all the people in the metropolitan area that you live in, you keep attracting that type of person. What is it about you? Okay. You mind if I borrow something that you said earlier, not as a shot at you, but I just want to use it for example.
Oh no, use it. This is my session. Use it.
Okay. So if you keep attracting guys that are vocally and emotionally aggressive as they try to get their points across, and you keep shutting down, then what is it about you that needs to shut down?
And that's the question I was going to ask you, because I think sometimes I like confident and arrogant men, but sometimes that plays out in aggressive behavior. Sometimes a man, and that's the thing. So it's like, okay, I like that, and I'm attracted to confident and arrogant men, but sometimes they flip it into aggressive, like it switches on you. Yeah.
Right. And the question is, Is it possible to like confident without arrogant?
That's the question.
So what is it about that? And with the recognition, and here's the thing, with the recognition that everything has a trade-off.
And that's our next question, folks, is that what are the steps to changing an individual relationship paradigm? And here we go. And go ahead, because this is real talk. Take it, people, stop playing, get your, y'all know what's happening. Okay, I'm taking notes.
Okay, so you have to recognize, first of all, everybody has a payoff.
Okay.
You do what you do for a reason, even if it's unconscious. But if you keep showing up with the same behavior, you have to recognize that one of the ways you deal with the individual paradigm first of all, let me just say right off the bat, you can't change your partner's relationship paradigm. Let me get that out of the way, because this concept that you can fix another person is ridiculous. Most people don't know how to fix themselves. Okay. Exactly. Now you can help someone fix their partner's their relationship paradigm, but I'm a big believer that a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. So if you coerce someone into changing, the moment they get a chance to recalibrate, they will.
Yep.
All right. Now, how do you deal with yourself? You deal with yourself, again, first of all, by asking the question. Okay, who's the common denominator in this? Okay, again, I am. So first of all, that's the owning. Okay. What are the commonalities? In other words, what are the common characteristics that my partners have had throughout my dating or relationship history?
Okay.
3, okay, what is it in me that keeps attracting those types of people with those type of characteristics? What is it in me that keeps attracting those type of people with those type of characteristics? And then number 4, and this is the key, what do I want now?
Oh.
What do I want now? Because
okay, folks, if y'all waiting for me to give an answer, I'm not giving that answer. Okay, this is my one-on-one, but I'm not giving that answer.
Okay, because what do I want now?
What do I want now? I got to think about it.
Right, requires thinking. Okay, so I teach people in metaphysics a term called the mental equivalent. Was made famous by a famous metaphysical writer named Emmett Fox in the early 20th century. And the mental equivalent is clarity of thinking and conviction of feeling. Like that's the mental blueprint or the mental equivalent to which you give universal law to attract back into your life. Now, so the reason why clarity of thought is so important is because you have to be definite. As Reverend Ike would say, you must be definite with the infinite. If I went to the John Hancock building, downtown Chicago, and I wanted to go eat at the Signature Room, 95th floor restaurant, if I got in the elevator and I didn't press a button, the elevator could take me to any floor because somebody else is pressing the buttons, and I'll just end up on any floor instead of the floor I want to go to. So you have to get very clear about what it is that you want, and you have to choose it. Even when stuff shows up that you normally are attracted to, but you're saying that's not what I want anymore. This is what I'm choosing, because now you are literally reprogramming your mind. And there's no other way for me to say that. I keep this scripture on my wall in my office because when people walk into my office, I want them to see it. Why? Do not be conformed to this world. And the world could be your way of thinking. You don't have to be there, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. Transformation only happens through a renewed mind. So you have to literally reprogram your mind. So what I would tell people is simple. Like listening to this podcast, you have to get new information. 2, you have to do your inner work, journal. Get books on relationships. I have my Truth Transforms books that will be coming out by the end of this year. We also have a workbook that Christine and I created that has some very good key steps and questions and exercises. You have to end up doing the work if you want the results. So for me, it's not easy. It's just 1, 2, 3. What I would say is you got to do the work. You have to challenge beliefs that don't give you happiness, because it could be a part of your paradigm, but it doesn't make you happy. A lot of people do things that they don't like, but they do it because it's a part of their paradigm. A lot of people take actions, addictions, and habits and things that are not beneficial to their well-being,
Right.
but they do them anyway because it's a part of their paradigm. So what I'm saying is this: you have to go all out in shattering an old paradigm, and then you have to choose, what is it that I desire? What is it that I really want? What do I choose to experience in a marriage, in a relationship, in a whatever? And then be very definite about those things and allow those things to become your new non-negotiable, unalterable terms, because that creates the new paradigm. That creates the new paradigm. Because again, if I meet no one but me, if I keep showing up the same way, the same type of people will keep showing up.
Exactly. So you can stop asking yourself that,
Right.
which lends to, our next question is what to look for to understand your partner does not want to change their paradigm. And that means you as an individual, if you the person in a relationship or the person you with. Like, how do you recognize that?
When you don't give grace. I'm a big believer in grace.
Okay.
When you are showing up in a space to where what they used to do, what they do, they've always done, but now it irritates you at a high level, that's lack of grace. When people don't want to communicate what they need or what they want, or basic decency, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, this is what's happening. All of those type of things are breakdowns in relationships. All right. Common goals. Like, okay, we don't have to always be on the same paragraph, but we need to at least be on the same page. We're not always going to agree with about everything. So it's those are some of the things that you can watch and see, okay, is this something that I need to stay in? Is it fulfilling? Do I feel loved? Do I feel supported?
Right.
Do I feel understood? Do I feel that I'm being communicated with in honesty, love, and integrity? Do they guard my heart with tenderness? So these are just basic questions. Because if you can't answer those questions, all those questions are no, 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 then I would say, then why are you doing it? Why are you in it?
Why are you in it? Yeah.
Okay, see, because here's the thing. I allow people to keep their excuses and their problems. I'm not for debating you out of your limitation.
Say that again.
I'm not for debating you out of your limitation. Once I'm clear that you want to hold on to this, I believe in freedom. Therefore, hold on to it. What I will not engage in is the continued conversation about this breakdown or this bad relationship or whatever, when you are not willing to do anything to address it. You either fix it, you either accept it, or you leave it.
Because I don't think people understand, Gaylon, what you're saying is it can re-impact their paradigm. And people understand their paradigm is connected to their emotions, their thoughts, their feelings about something. And what you're telling people is just very clear. If this person is very persistent in saying, I'm not going to change, this is what's happening, and they don't really care how it impacts you, then you need to look at yourself. Which leads into, and folks, I'm going to leave Gaylon with this to have a conversation with you all. Again, I let y'all in my one-on-ones when we have them and I'm here. But in this last question, I'm going to leave him with you so he can talk directly to you all, is that making the hard choice when your partner does not change the relationship paradigm or the individual paradigm so you can successfully move forward. Like, what do you do when that doesn't happen? And he needs to talk to all of us. So I'm going to say, Gaylon, I appreciate you letting me be on your podcast. Thank you for my one-on-one every week. And I'm going to leave you with that question so you can tell us all what to do. Okay.
All
See you
right.
next week, Gaylon.
So I think that we all need to understand a few things. One, when it comes to your non-negotiables, if your non-negotiable does not have consequences, then you're just talking loud and saying nothing. Your non-negotiables have to have weight. If a person being honest or a person staying within the context of the relationship emotionally and sexually matter, then that has to be a non-negotiable that if it happens, the violation of it changes everything. I'm out. Sometimes people can come back from that. You have to determine what that means to you. So if a person doesn't want to do the work in the relationship, I give really serious spiritual advice around this. This is the time when you get centered in whatever your religious beliefs are. And I realize some people are agnostic and atheists, so you have to work around how this works for you. Getting centered, taking deep breaths, and just asking your higher power for guidance. What is the best and highest action for me in this relationship? Should I go or should I stay? I believe that, and these are just those type of questions. And I believe that everyone has the power of intuition, which I call the wisdom of God in every soul. The wisdom of God in every soul will always guide you into right action. So when you're seeing things not matching up, you have to honestly ask yourself, do I love me enough to make the healthy choice for myself? What is the healthy choice for me? What is the healthy choice in this relationship for me? And when you get to the space of understanding, do I love myself enough? Then you can get to the other points, which is I deserve to be loved properly. I deserve to be treated properly. I deserve to have whatever the qualities that matter to you in the relationship. And if a person can't meet those needs, then you either leave, you can, again, try to accept it and say, okay, this is the way it is. And you can just decide to be unfulfilled. You can leave, you can accept it, or you can see if that person's willing to work to get it better. What doesn't work is complaining. So I would say don't complain, take action one way or another. Now, for me and my way of thinking, I'm a big believer that once you get to the space to where the grace is gone, once you get to the space to where honesty is not there, once you get to the space where poor communication is happening, once you get to the space where fidelity potentially has been violated, once you get to the space to where basic integrity is not being honored in the relationship, in my opinion, it's time to go. All right. And as Jesus said, shake the dust off of your feet and keep it moving. Now, sometimes you need to pay attention to that earlier than later. Some people drive right past all the yellow flags. Yellow flag means slow down. Red flag means stop. Some people drive past all of the yellow flags and the red flags because the sex was good, the person was cute, the person had money, the person had prestige, power, fame, position, whatever. Feed my ego, pump me up, without paying attention to the things that are destructive, characteristics that are destructive, that are not honorable, meaning like they lie a lot and they get caught in those lies, don't know how to communicate in a healthy way with other people, including you. Some people drive past all of those things. And if you drove past the yellow flags and the red flags, you now have a decision to make. If I know I'm headed toward a crash and I don't change course or hit the brakes, who's really responsible for my pain? So I want to leave that with you. I want you to take responsibility for your life and say today, a quote from Gary Zukav, I didn't create this. I choose to accept the choices I make. I choose to take the responsibility for the choices I make and the consequences they create. I choose to take responsibility for the choices I make and the consequences they create. Now, once you've taken responsibility, then you make the choice. What is it that I really want to experience? And you create the mental equivalent. Clarity of thought. Get as clear as possible in your mind. Picture it in your mind. Write it down. Get real clear. And then sit with the image. Visualize the image until you get the conviction, until you feel it in your gut. And then you release it to God, Holy Spirit, the universe, whatever term you like to use, to fulfill itself. You planted the seed in fertile soil, and now you allow it to grow. That's what I want to leave you with today. So with that, I want you to just look up something online. It's free, I'm sure, somewhere. I want you to look up 2 things online. I want you to look up Life is Consciousness by Emmett Fox. It's online, free. You can find it. Life is Consciousness by Emmett Fox. And the other one is The Mental Equivalent by Emmett Fox. As you read those things, if you have questions, again, send them to Christine or put them in the comment section, and I'll make sure I address them during the podcast. You all take care. God bless you all. I love you, even if I don't know you, because I know who you are. Take care.
My name is Christine Burkett, the inventor of the 5 F's to Love. This is a compatibility app. It's an app that gives you an opportunity to rate words that start with the letter F in chronological order of importance to you, to help you find your one true love, your soulmate, and the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. So after you've taken the time to rate your F's in chronological order, you send a link to the person, I don't know, you just met, or the person you've been dating for quite some time. Or maybe it's the person you've been married to for 30 to 40 to 50 years. And then you compare your top 5 F's to find out what things you have in common and things that you may perhaps need to work on. This is taking a simplistic perspective on how to find your one true love, your soulmate, the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with.